It is a pleasure to welcome back into the Frank Beckman Show once again the state congressman from Dryden, Republican Paul Mitchell. And he represents the 10th District, and there's a lot going on in Washington, always is. And I want to start, if you don't mind, with William Barr and what's happening with the Attorney General and the Judiciary Committee, which is trying to, well, it's alleging that he's covering up for President Donald Trump by not redacting the full report that was issued by Robert Mueller in his 2.5-year investigation. But that redacted report is unredacted for the leaders of this committee, isn't it? They can read what's in there.
Yes, they can. And interesting enough, Frank, as of yesterday, no Democrat leadership had read the full report, had gone to Justice Department and read it. I know that members of the Republican leadership, the Judiciary Committee has, Doug Collins has, and most of those redactions are either information about ongoing matters, as indictments against some of the Russians. There are a number of Russians indicted for activities in the United States, and others are kind of methods and sources of intelligence, which is pretty sensitive information that we can't have leaked. I know it'll shock you to know that leaks out of Congress only happen like daily.
What can you tell us about the report and what you've heard from some of your colleagues?
Well, as you know, I've read the redacted report. I think I've been through it, the entire thing twice now, and my colleagues have. And the reality is, the intent of the Mueller report was to investigate whether or not the campaign had colluded. It's not a legal term, but had a conspiracy to influence the election. That they actually worked in hand to do that. And despite all the 2.5 years of investigation, what will probably be $35 million in cost, there's no indication that's the case. Were there contacts? Yeah, the Russians tried. They tried a lot of things, but there's no indication of that, and that was the intent of the investigation.
Well, they were contacted by Hillary Clinton's campaign, though, to get the Steele report.
Well, they were, and to some extent, opposition research happens. The Clinton campaign also went over, I understand, to Ukraine and tried to get information out of there as well in terms of Trump's dealings there and activities. And opposition research can be carried too far, and it seems like in this case it probably was. But we need to legislate around here. We could spend our entire forever investigating, but we're not getting things done for the American people. And I've heard people say, well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I suggest that based on my 28 months here, I'm not sure that's really true. I think we need to focus on getting a few things done because we aren't very good at multitasking.
All right, so what are you focused on right now?
Well, I've got a thing I'll put out here shortly. It's an op-ed with a Democrat on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee to really fundamentally address our federal responsibilities for infrastructure. In Michigan, the jargon is fix the damn roads. Well, infrastructure goes beyond the roads to bridges, freshwater systems, wastewater systems, rural broadband. There's so many issues we have with infrastructure that it's deteriorating the country. We need to take on the federal role. In my opinion, block grant money to the states that they put money with to significant match to fix their infrastructure where they think is a priority. And we need to find a way at the federal level to fund that. And next week I hope to get an op-ed out with a Democrat, that a bipartisan proposal to take on a serious federal role to fix our infrastructure and support states in doing that.
So the feds would send money to the states that would be dedicated to working on infrastructure projects like underground sewers and water lines that are possibly corroded or are made of lead and do things like that.
And based on priorities in the state and local area. The idea the federal government creates these grant programs, decides what they're going to fund in places. And from Washington, you think about it, it's pretty amazing. The needs in Michigan are significantly different than the needs in New York or Illinois, and we ought to put that money out. No, we want local match, state and local money. I mean, I'm talking as much as 50% match, because we're not going to fund things just because there's money there. There's either skin in the game locally, or then they're not going to do it.
Now, is this money going to be aimed at the local communities, or will it be given to the state to distribute?
It would be given to the states to do a competitive grant, to do planning, to a competitive grant. It's done the state, so the state, working with communities, can decide. We're gonna work on, say, sewer system in southeast Michigan, which we've got a problem with storm sewers. and flow into Lake St. Clair. Maybe it's rural broadband in part of my district because they don't have access to high-speed internet. There's a lot of different needs, and the reality is, when people talk about infrastructure, it's always about our highways. Well, yeah, they're not so good, but we have other big problems that are impacting our success and our economy.
No, it's still my contention. The biggest road problems are in local communities where they have the responsibility to fix those roads, and they don't have the funding to do it.
Well, I think here's the problem I think we've seen is taxpayers are willing to deal with taxes if they're committed to a particular activity, in this case roads, and they're protected to do that, and it's not a shell game. The problem we saw with Proposal 1 that Governor Snyder had put forth was that you and I talked about it extensively. I called it a Christmas tree where money moved from one thing to another and money was shuttled around. The same problem exists with Gretchen Whitmer's proposal for the 45-cent addition gas tax. About 40% of that money, when you look at it in detail, would move to other things, not our roads and bridges. Stop the shell game. Get money for what you say you're going to do and use it for that.
Amen for that. Hey, thanks for joining us. As always, have a great weekend, Mother's Day weekend, and we sure appreciate the time again this morning.
Always happy to do it, Frank. Take care.
Thank you, Congressman Paul Mitchell, Republican from Dryden.